The morning the past rode back into his life. Cole Hartman was fixing a broken fence post at the edge of his ranch, squinting into the white blaze of the Arizona sun and thinking that some days were just too quiet for their own good. The wind slid over the dry grass in soft hiss-like whispers. The boards of the old house creaked behind him, and the distant call of a hawk was the only sound that reminded him the sky still belonged to something wild and free. Cole wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, straightened, and leaned on his hammer for a moment, his eyes drifting, as they often did, to the jagged line of red rock hills on the horizon. Somewhere out there, years ago, everything in his life had changed. Somewhere out there, a frightened young Apache girl with eyes like the night sky had stood between him and a bullet, and he had carried her out of a canyon that stank of gunpowder and fear. He had been barely more than a boy then, stubborn, reckless, a rancher's son, hot-headed enough to ride into a feud that wasn't his. He remembered the bandits, the chaos, the strange quiet when he found the girl hiding behind a boulder, her dress torn, her tiny hands pressed over her ears as if she could shut out the screams. He remembered how light she'd been when he lifted her, how tightly she'd clung to him, and how her enormous dark eyes had locked onto his as if he were the only solid thing left in a world crumbling into dust. He had taken a bullet in the shoulder that day, forced his horse up a narrow path with one arm while shielding her with the other, and when he finally reached a safe stretch of ground, her people had been waiting, grim warriors, painted faces, arrows ready. Instead of killing him, they took the girl from his arms, and the oldest among them had nodded once in heavy, solemn acknowledgement. Cole never learned her name. She never learned his, at least that was what he thought. The girl had only whispered one trembling sentence in English before she disappeared. Behind the ring of warriors, "I remember you, cowboy." Then she was gone, swallowed by the canyons, and life moved on. Years later, the memory of her still drifted through his mind on lonely nights, when the wind sounded like someone softly calling his name. Now, as he raised the hammer again, he heard the faint thunder of hooves. At first so distant he thought he imagined it, then growing louder, stronger, until the ground itself seemed to hum. Cole paused, eyes narrowing against the glare as he turned toward the sound. A single rider was cutting across the open land, a slim figure on a dark horse, moving with a confidence that sent a ripple of unease through him. Strangers rarely approached his ranch, alone, not with the stories told about the stubborn cowboy who kept to himself and preferred cattle to company. Yet this rider didn't slow, didn't hesitate. The horse came to a stop in a swirl of dust just a few yards away, and Cole's world narrowed to the woman in the saddle. She swung down with easy grace, her long black hair braided and threaded with turquoise beads that caught the light. Her dress was a blend of Apache tradition and something purely her own. Soft, buckskin hugging a strong, graceful frame, a leather belt adorned with stones the color of desert skies after a storm. A choker circled her throat, and her eyes, those incredible dark eyes, pinned him in place with a look that felt like a memory coming to life. Cole's breath caught in his chest, the hammer feeling suddenly ridiculous and small in his hand. "Can I help you, ma'am?" He managed, his voice hoarse from dust and surprise. The woman tilted her head, studying him with a familiarity that made heat crawl under his skin. "You don't remember me," she said quietly, and her voice carried an accent of the land, soft, musical, edged with steel. "I've thought of you every day, and you don't even remember." Cole frowned, trying to place her, to connect the feeling in his chest with a name or time. "I'm sorry," he said, setting the hammer down slowly. "Should I?" The corner of her mouth curved, not with amusement, but something like hurt pride. She stepped closer, and for a heartbeat he caught the scent of wild sage and wood smoke clinging to her. "Years ago," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "In the canyon near Red Mesa, bandits attacked my people. I was a child, alone, hiding. A cowboy rode in, foolish and brave, and carried me out while bullets chased your shadow. He bled for me. He saved my life. I never forgot his face." The memory slammed into Cole so hard his knees almost buckled. That canyon, that terrified girl, those enormous eyes. The world around him seemed to spin as the past and present collided, and he saw it clearly now. The way she'd clung to his shirt, the way her tears had soaked his neck. "You?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The girl, that was you?" Her gaze softened, a flicker of satisfaction breaking through her guarded expression. "My name is Naya," she said. My people called me Little Hawk once. I am not so little now. Cole stared at her, at the strength in her shoulders, the calm in her stance. She had grown into a woman whose presence filled the empty ranch yard as easily as the sun filled the sky. Naya, he repeated, letting the name settle on his tongue like something that had always belonged there. I didn't know what happened to you. I always wondered. Naya's fingers brushed the beaded bracelet on her wrist, and he realized some of the stones were old, worn, like they had traveled many miles with her. After you saved me, my people moved far, she said. There were changes, wars, broken promises, shifting lands, but I never forgot you. The elders told me that a life debt is not washed away by time, it grows. It must be honored in full. Cole shifted uneasily, not quite understanding. A life debt? She nodded once, solemn. When someone saves your life, you owe them a debt of honor. Some repay with gifts, some with service, some with protection. She paused, eyes searching his face as if looking for the boy she once knew. I chose a different way. The wind lifted the edge of her braid, and a strand of hair brushed her cheek. Cole's heart thudded in his chest, an unsettling rhythm that didn't belong to the calm, quiet man he'd become. What way is that? He asked, his voice low. Naya drew in a breath, shoulders straightening as if she were stepping into a sacred circle. I have come back, she said, and her words seemed to sink into the ground itself. To marry you. The air between them crackled. For a long moment, all he could hear was the pounding of his own blood and the distant buzz of insects in the heat. Marry him? This stranger, this girl from the past turned warrior woman, had crossed miles of desert to stand in his yard and declare something that outrageous, that impossible, with the same calm as stating the time of day. Cole actually laughed, a short, startled sound, the only defense his rattled heart could manage. You've come to what? He asked, sure he'd misheard. Her eyes flashed, not in anger but in stubborn certainty. To marry you, she repeated. I told the elders it was my right. You pulled me from death and gave me back my days. Those days belong to you now. It is our way that a life debt can be repaid with a life joined. My life, your life, together. Cole took a step back, more from the force of her words than any desire to retreat. That's not how it works out here, he said, gesturing vaguely to the endless spread of land around them. You don't just ride up to a man you barely know and tell him you're here to marry him. You think I don't know you? She countered softly. I was a child, but I remember your eyes. You were angry at the men who hurt us, but gentle with me. You bled and made jokes so I would not cry. I remember your hands shaking when the bullet hit you. And still you held me tighter. I spent many nights wondering if you lived. When I learned you did, I watched from far from the hills. I saw the kind of man you became, alone, honest, strong. I know enough. Her voice lowered further, a note of something vulnerable threading through it. And I know my heart. Cole's gaze flickered to the house behind him, the weathered porch where he sometimes sat and watched the stars alone, sipping coffee gone cold, pretending he didn't feel the hollow spaces time left inside a man. He thought of the years spent patching fences, raising cattle, burying his parents, and telling himself this was enough. Suddenly, under the weight of this woman's steady stare, it didn't feel like enough at all. You watched me, he said, the thought both unsettling and strangely comforting. For years? From a distance, she said. I did not come sooner because I questioned. Her gaze dropped briefly, and for the first time he saw a hint of uncertainty crack through her composure. I am Apache. You are a white rancher. The world does not make such unions easy, but the elders say the world is changing. Some change is good. I chose to believe that. She lifted her head again, eyes blazing now. And I am not here to ask if you accept the debt. I am here to fulfill my promise. I told myself that when I was strong, when I could ride and hunt and build a fire in the rain and stand on my own, I would come back. I have done those things. I am here. Cole felt something inside his chest loosen, then twist. Naya, he said slowly, marriage isn't a favor you owe me. I didn't save you to get anything in return. I did it because it was right. She stepped closer still, closing the last of the distance, until he could see the tiny scar near her temple, the faint freckles across her nose, the subtle tremble in her fingers she tried to hide. I know, she said. That is why you are worthy. The silence between them deepened, not empty but full of possibilities he hadn't dared consider in years.
He thought of the loneliness he wore like a second skin.
Of the nights the wind sounded like someone whispering just beyond his door. He thought of this woman riding across miles of harsh land with nothing but her conviction, and the weight of tradition behind her. "You're asking me to change everything," he murmured. "Your life's already changed," she said simply. "You just don't see it yet." For a moment, their gazes locked and something shifted. The ranch no longer felt like a quiet, forgotten corner of the world. It felt like the center of a story that had begun years ago in a canyon scented with dust and fear and was only now reaching the moment that truly mattered. Behind them, the old wooden house cast long shadows across the dry earth, and the sky stretched out vast and endless, as if daring them to dream bigger than the lines others had drawn on maps and hearts. Cole let out a long, shaky breath. "I don't know how to be the man you think I am," he admitted. "I barely know how to be
anything but a rancher trying not to
lose his land." Naya's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. "Then we will learn together," she said. "You know how to build fences and raise cattle. I know how to read tracks and call the rain with patience. You know how to mend broken gates. I know how to mend a spirit with laughter. Together, we learn how to be husband and wife, if you wish it." Her last words hung between them like a question and a challenge all at once. Cole swallowed hard, realizing that the decision he made in this dusty yard would ripple out through both of their lives, through their people, through the future itself. "I can't answer that in a heartbeat," he said finally. "This isn't a small thing, Naya. It's not just about a life debt or tradition. It's about feelings, trust, two hearts choosing the same road." She held his gaze, and he saw it there, the quiet hope, the stubborn faith, the vulnerability she refused to hide. "Then give your heart time," she said. "I will." "Stay, let the days speak. Let your spirit answer." Cole felt a strange, unexpected warmth spread in his chest at the idea of her staying, of waking up and seeing her crossing the yard, of hearing another pair of footsteps in the house that had echoed hollow for so long. It scared him. It thrilled him. It made him feel alive. "You'll stay?" he asked almost cautiously. "Your people know why I came," she said. "Some bless it, some doubt. But it is my path. I ride it." She cast a slow look over the ranch, the sagging porch, the weathered barn, the wide stretch of grazing land shimmering under the sun. "You work hard," she added. "You should not have to do it alone." Her words struck a chord in him that had been waiting silently for someone to pluck. Finally, Cole nodded as if coming to a fragile truce with fate. "All right," he said. "Stay, help if you want. We'll see what the days say." A tiny, relieved breath slipped from her, so soft he almost didn't catch it. She reached for the small leather pouch hanging at her belt and pressed it into his hand. The pouch was warm from her body, smelling faintly of sage and smoke. "What's this?" he asked. "The first piece of my promise," she said. "Open it when the sun touches the far hills alone." Before he could question her, she turned away to tend her horse, leaving him standing with the pouch in his hand and his world tilted on its axis. As the day stretched on, they moved around each other like planets caught in the same orbit. Naya helped fetch water from the well, her strong arms working the pump as if she had done it all her life. She hauled feed to the barn without being asked, startled the skittish mare with a few whispered Apache words that soothed the animal better than any rope, and laughed once, just once, when the ranch dog tried to impress her by chasing its tail and failing spectacularly. Each small moment stitched itself into Cole's awareness, forming a picture of a woman who was both flame and earth, fierce and gentle, familiar and utterly new. He showed her where the corral post needed reinforcing, and she listened with a focus that made him aware of his own voice in a way he hadn't been in years. He found himself explaining not just what to do, but why. How the storms that rolled in from the west could knock down weak boards. How the calves tended to crowd the gate when scared. How the land spoke if you knew how to read it. She listened with the same respect she might give an elder, treating his knowledge as something valuable, not just ordinary chores. When the sun finally began to sink, painting the sky in streaks of orange and rose, Cole climbed the small hill behind the house, the leather pouch still in his pocket. He sat on the rock that had become his evening spot over the years, the place he went when the silence felt too heavy and he needed the sky's reminder that he was a small but real piece of something larger. With steady fingers, he opened the pouch. Inside was a Single smooth stone the color of deep twilight, threaded on a slender leather cord. It was carved with a symbol, 2 lines crossing encircled by a ring. Naya's shadow fell across him a moment later, her footsteps silent on the dry grass. "Do you know what it means?" she asked quietly. Cole traced the carving with his thumb. "No," he admitted, "but it feels important." "It is the mark of a promise," she said, sinking down to sit beside him, leaving just enough space for the night air between them. 2 paths crossing, bound by the circle of time. It says, "We met once because the world willed it. We meet again because our hearts agreed. When I was a girl, after you carried me from the canyon, the medicine woman gave me this stone. She said I should return it to the man who saved me when my spirit knew its own mind." Her gaze dropped to his hand, to the stone resting there. "Today my spirit knows." Cole swallowed. The weight of the stone, suddenly feeling like the weight of a future he hadn't imagined but could now almost see. "What if my spirit is slower than yours?" he asked, half teasing, half afraid of the answer. She smiled faintly, the fading light catching in her eyes. "Then I will wait," she said. "I crossed many miles already. A few more days, a few more weeks are nothing. I did not come to take your choice. I came to give mine." They sat in companionable silence as the sun sank, and the stars began to appear one by one. Timid at first, then bolder. For the first time in many years, Cole didn't feel alone on that hill. The wind that brushed his face felt less like a ghost and more like a blessing. He closed his fingers around the stone and knew, with sudden clarity, that his life would never again be as quiet as it had been that morning. Down below, the ranch house waited, with its creaking boards and empty rooms, but it no longer felt empty. It felt like a doorway. If you're watching this story and feeling your heart pull toward it, a future version of Cole might say to the listener, "Don't forget there are more parts to this journey." And if you, listener, want to know whether Cole accepts Naya's promise, how their worlds clash and then come together, and whether love can overcome years of distance and the weight of tradition, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss Chapter 2, because that's where the real test of their hearts begins.